Hey guys! Today I'm chatting with Deanna Boozy and she's with Breezy Brides. She is a travel agent who specializes in destination weddings and also provides resources through her podcast, website, social media, and does that for couples planning their destination weddings. So, welcome, Deanna.
Thank you so much for having me. I know it was kind of like a random way that we found each other on Instagram, but I feel like once we
Yeah.
started kind of chatting, we realized it's just nice to talk about weddings, regardless of what kind of wedding that you have. So it's been nice.
Oh, yeah. It's been really fun because we kind of come from different parts of the wedding world, and I just love coming together to hearing your perspective on everything with destination weddings because that is what you are all about with your Breezy Brides podcast. So, definitely, if you're listening to this, go and subscribe to her podcast. But today, we are talking about destination weddings versus traditional weddings and what the costs might be and what the cost differences are. Like, Deanna's going to do a really great breakdown for us today. And so we can go ahead and get started because you look at these numbers every day with your job and what you do. And you are number crunching and you are talking with couples about their budgets. And so, what is kind of that typical destination wedding price range, would you say?
Yeah, I feel like this is something that you could probably agree with in that it can be a huge range. And I know
Oh,
that's not like
yes.
the easy answer for couples.
Yeah.
A lot of the times when people are considering a destination wedding, if they haven't decided which kind of wedding they want, they just want to know how much a wedding is going to be. So
Mm-hmm.
the main focus is kind of what is your goal? Is your goal to save money or to, get as much cash back as you can with the incentives that the resorts offer? Or is it just because you want to get married on the beach or something like that? So there's kind of a wide range, of course, and that goes along with any wedding, really. So we can kind of break down a little bit, what are the biggest expenses that a destination wedding has, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of the ballpark range of what you would expect to pay depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go for it. So, starting off, what would you say?
So you'll see if you do like a quick Google search, you'll go to like the knot.com. And the
Right.
knot's biggest like article on destination weddings is that it averages around 30,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now, average is the key ticket there because I have
Right.
done weddings that the couple spent less than 10,000 on their destination wedding. I've
Mm-hmm.
also done weddings where the couple spent 40,000. And of
Right.
course these weddings are in a different range, but the biggest factors here are usually like the group size, the time of
Mm-hmm.
year, things like that. So the biggest expense, I would say, when it comes to the destination wedding is the wedding package that the resort has to offer. So I think this can kind of translate or be compared to like the wedding venue for a traditional wedding. So, what a destination wedding typically does with their wedding package is they offer different tiers or they do like an a la carte type of option. So, a lot of the times when we get on a call with a couple, we want to know how many guests you think you're going to have and what's your budget. And that gives us a really good idea of how affordable the resort needs to be, especially when it comes to their wedding packages. Now, packages kind of range all the way from complimentary, which, let me preface that with saying this is a very simple type of package. If you did, I think the big ticket is like, oh, complimentary, I'll just get that package, right? A
Right.
lot of the times it's less than 20 guests. Like cocktail hour or reception potentially is not included at all. So it is just the wedding ceremony. It's kind of more used for like an elopement or a wedding that's going to be just for like you and your immediate family. And then outside of the
Mm-hmm.
complimentary packages, you kind of get more, added decor, reception, private events included with the higher tier packages. And then you've got like the top tier packages, and those can range really anywhere from like 15,000 to, I just had a wedding that was quoted at 25,000 for their package because they were going to have so many more guests than what the package includes. For example, a lot of the times packages include up to like 30 or 40 guests. If you're going to have 150 people at your wedding, you're paying that added fee for every single person over that amount. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really like the biggest expense when it comes to destination weddings. Um, how
For
would you
sure.
say that kind of compares for like a wedding, booking a wedding venue?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that, like you said, your main cost is going to depend on your guest count. You're paying per head, per person. And so, depending on where you're getting married, you have to factor in food. Food here is like one of the biggest
Mm,
expenses for your wedding. And so, it's like a 100-person wedding versus a 200-person wedding, it's going to be double. Because you're paying for every little thing that the person needs. Think of like what one person needs at a wedding. They need a chair, they need a table to sit at, they need a favor if you're doing a favor, they need food, they need however many drinks per hour, like, so just think of that price per head is what I like to tell couples, and then you multiply it. But I really like what you said about how you're sort of reverse engineering it, where it's like, okay, what's your budget? How many people do you want? Now let's divide that. Let's do a little math problem here and see what your price per head is going to be. And if that guest count changes, if that number changes at all, then either your budget has to change or something's got to change here to make all the math work. And so I really like that, what you said about that. I did have one question for you though. For the complimentary package, is it like genuinely complimentary because you're still like paying for your room and everything at the resort? Is that correct? Like your trip?
That's right. Yeah. So
Okay.
they kind of separate the accommodations with the wedding package, but the complimentary package
Gotcha.
is like if the couple books, 5 nights at the resort, the wedding package that's complimentary and everything included with it is truly complimentary. So it is kind of
Mm-hmm.
nice, like I said, for those groups that have like a very small, intimate group, or it's just like an elopement. You can
Mm-hmm.
make it extremely affordable that way. But and what I've seen some couples do too is if it is going to be just like immediate family or something, they do the complimentary package and then they just do a like um semi-private dinner at the resort. So like they can still kind of get that dinner and reception type of thing if they want to go to like the club after or anything like that. It's not the most private as compared to like the other packages and stuff, but you can still kind of like participate in all the events. So
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool though that that's an option. It's like if you're already paying for your vacation, they'll kind of throw some things in if you want to get married there. So that's a
yeah.
huge perk of having a destination wedding, I think. If you want to sort of like do this little elopement or do, a really private ceremony, I think that's a really great option. And it's really affordable. I feel like just these numbers that you're saying, I feel like they're very affordable compared to what weddings here cost. That, and they can be, as far as just like how fancy are you getting here? Like, I think that's a really great option for a destination wedding. Might not be as expensive as you think.
Yes, and I think that one of the biggest arguments with that point is then the couple starts to worry about how much are our guests going to pay themselves to be there, right? And I think
Right.
that's kind of one of the
Yeah.
biggest arguments for destination weddings is yes, most of the time it's going to be more affordable for the couple, but if
Mhm.
you are, if you come from a small town or something like that where a local wedding isn't as expensive for your guests to attend and now you're asking them to fly to a different country to stay at this resort, potentially paying for passports if you need them, things like that. I think that's kind of where guests or couples really need to decide, is this something that we want because it's our dream to have this wedding and whoever can come, great? Or in the most ideal situation, all their friends and family are really excited about them having a destination wedding and, are just showing support for it. And then everyone's having a great time.
Yeah, that's so true because the resorts really are making their money off of every guest who is staying there. And so that's probably why they can offer these packages for a pretty affordable cost because like you said, the guests are all paying for it. up front anyways. And so
Right.
that's a
Yeah.
really interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
And the resorts, they just want to fill the rooms. So if they can get a
Oh,
100
yeah.
person wedding and fill their rooms, that's great for them. But
Oh,
that kind of
great.
leads
Yeah.
me into the next biggest expense with destination weddings, and that is
Yeah,
the flights and accommodation. So
for sure.
again, can kind of like can vary greatly. So I will
Mhm.
say, just for like the bride and grooms or the couples flights and accommodations, it can range from like 1,500 to like over 5,000. The biggest
Wow.
reason for that is, number one, the flights. Where are they flying out of? If they can get a direct
Mhm.
flight out of a big city right to the destination, that's pretty affordable. If they're going to like some remote island somewhere, the flights are going to be
Right.
more expensive in that case. And then
Mhm.
especially for the room itself. So some couples like to choose like the cheapest room category that the resort has, just to save as much money as they can to stay within their budget. And some couples, I'm not going to lie, this would be me, uh let's book the fanciest room that they have
Ha,
to really
yeah.
like, take full advantage of what we're doing here. So I
Totally.
have had couples like do both. We're just like, we don't care what room we're going to be in, we're just spending time with friends and family. And other couples that are like, I want the swim out oceanfront, like, the
Mm.
best room possible. So that will kind of
Yeah.
affect their budget depending on that. And then to kind of go along with the accommodations too, you're also kind of choosing a resort. If trying to get your guests to stay within a certain budget as well, choosing your resort that's going to accommodate for them too. So you can, go with a resort that would say, probably more low budget would be like 150 to 200 per night per person.
Okay.
Whereas I've also had resorts that are like adults only, 5-star luxury, and their guests are paying more like 400 or 500 per night per person. So
Wow,
really the
yeah.
couple kind of gets to choose what we think our guests can afford, what is reasonable, and it'll kind of vary from there.
Mhm. So that's something that the couple then chooses what category room all their guests are going to be in. So is that something that the guests don't choose then? Like if they're like, "Oh, we want an upgraded room or we want like the most basic room." Can they do that? Or is that something that it's like, no, if you're coming to our wedding, you're getting this tier room?
Yeah, so the couple does get to choose. Once
Okay.
we have our consult, how we typically do it is we set up a contracted room block between us and the resort. So
Gotcha.
what's really nice about that is we tell them, this is typically what most couples do. Like 70% of their group will choose the cheapest room category, but then choose a
Mhm.
couple of upgraded rooms that you think maybe some of your guests would stay in. Um,
Okay.
Once that contract is locked in, the rates are locked in, so they don't increase between now and the wedding, which is super
That's
nice.
great. That's so
Yeah.
nice.
And especially if they're like kind of ahead of the game, they can get some really great rates for their guests. I just had, for example, we had a resort, Secrets Playa Blanca, and they just opened in February. So they were kind of running this like kind of grand opening deal. And I had a couple of
Mm.
couples that were interested in it. And long story short, it worked out amazingly. Their
That's
wedding won't be until
great.
next year, but they got the rates for a
Wow.
very affordable price, and now the rates have like tripled. But
Whoa.
so the guests got to stay. They those rates are locked in, so they got the great
Wow.
deal. Um,
That's a gamble because you're
yeah,
like, this is a brand new resort. You don't know if they have kinks to work out and but like you said, you can really take that chance and really win out in the end because
yeah.
you booked early and you got in early and you got
Well,
those rates locked
yeah.
in.
What's really great about that is I typically don't like to send a couple to a resort within like the first 6 months of them opening. So they offer
That's
these
good.
rates when they first opened, but the wedding date isn't until next year. So
Right. It's
they've got
booked
plenty of
out
time to work out,
further.
yeah, all those
Mm-hmm.
kinks,
That's
um,
great.
and kind of, build up their weddings department and things like that. So yeah.
That's so cool. So next we can talk about the videographer and the photographer. So are those are pretty much like included in the packages, right?
Yeah, so this depends too. And I wanted to kind of hear your what people are paying for a traditional wedding as well. So we've
Mm-hmm.
seen a lot more with destination weddings. Yes, a photographer is typically included in the package if it's not the complimentary kind, but it's very limited. So it's usually a photographer that's like employed by the resort, so you can't
Right.
really see their portfolio. You don't really know them that well. So what we've seen a ton lately, and along with that, it's limited number of files. So it'll only
Oh,
include like 25 photos, and then
wow.
anything additional you're paying for. So what we've seen a
Mhm.
lot of couples do is just hire an outside photographer or videographer, and they can do this in one of two ways. They can hire somebody locally, and then it's just an outside vendor that comes in for the day and shoots it and gives them all their content, or they fly somebody to stay, if they know someone local to where they live. They
Mhm.
fly them to stay at the resort for 3 nights, and then the photographer or videographer will typically waive their photographer fees because they're staying at the resort for free. So
That's
it
great.
kind of, yeah, it can kind of be a good deal on both ends. And the price range for that typically, I mean, I think photography and videography fees are kind of changing like all the time, but typically
Right.
like 1,500 to 2,000, or
Mhm.
staying at the resort. So it's kind of a nice deal.
Yeah, that's great. That is such a good deal because I think also if you're inviting a photographer or a videographer who is out of state or like someone who's local to you, but you want to bring them with you to your destination, I think that's a huge perk for the photographer as well because they might want to expand their portfolio and maybe they're someone who wants to get into more destination weddings. And so it gives them a great opportunity to build their portfolio with your wedding photos, but also getting a free trip out of it.
Yeah.
So that's a huge perk.
Yeah,
I
not a
love
bad
that.
deal at all. Did you know
Mhm.
like the rates for
Yeah. So I would say 2000 is probably like the minimum for
Oh
photography here
wow,
in
okay.
Nashville. I've seen some pretty luxury photographers charge up to $10,000 here in Nashville.
Wow.
So, like you said, it's all over the place. I would probably say average is around 3,500 to 5,000 for
Okay.
photography if you want like a reliable good photographer for your wedding.
Yeah, I feel like it also ranges depending on location too. Like
It
Nashville is
totally
a bigger
does.
city, like they're
Mhm.
probably charging more than just a small town photographer that's um
Mhm.
more affordable depending on where you live. So,
Yeah, definitely. I know. I think that's why this interview with you is like so shocking to me of how you can get these amazing destination weddings for so cheap. Of like, these prices are like the minimum wedding prices in Nashville. And so I love this.
yeah, I mean, I had a destination wedding in 2017, and that was our biggest factor. My husband wanted a traditional wedding at first, and he didn't, like most grooms, no offense, guys, don't really want to be involved in the planning that much. I
Hmm.
was always thinking I wanted a destination wedding, but he needed a little convincing. So I
Yeah.
pulled, the local vendors in the area and said, this is the per plate cost. This is how many people I think we would have. And then at that point, he's like, let's do a destination wedding.
Yeah, right? You're looking at the actual pricing sheets in front of you and being like, going to a destination could save you so much money. Um, we also have additional expenses that we need to watch out for when you are booking a destination wedding. Like you said, everything is sort of broken down into these packages, but everybody wants a custom wedding.
Mm.
Nobody wants a cookie cutter wedding. And so how do you go about these additional expenses at the
Yeah, so
resorts?
this is a big thing that we talk about with on our initial consult with the couple, because if you go ahead and go to these resort websites and look up their wedding packages, it'll say, 5,500 for the lavish package. Here's what's included. And in the back of
Hmm.
your mind, you're not thinking, oh, what's not included in that, right? You're
Right.
thinking, okay, it covers like the table decor, it covers the flowers, it covers whatever. And a lot of the times it does say like one boutonniere, one corsage, little details like that, or, basic table linens or something like that.
Hmm.
Then as you kind of get more familiar with the resort and work with the weddings team, you're realizing, oh, you know what? We really want string lights like hanging from the reception area. Or,
Right.
oh, we didn't realize the sound system wasn't included in the wedding package. So should we just get a
Wow.
DJ with that too? Or do we just pay for the sound system and create our own playlist? And those things can add up significantly in your budget. So
Hmm.
I think it's always just best to go into it trying to get as much information as you can. What's truly included in these packages, and what are we going to pay extra for? My little tip, I personally think the biggest factors are music and lighting. So if you are going
Mm,
to splurge or get any of those added features, I would say, decor is nice when you're looking at it on social media and you're looking at destination wedding photos. The ones that really catch your eye are the ones that have all these added decor, right? But the
right.
destination that you're going to a lot of the times is the decor. Like
Yes.
you've got a beautiful view of the ocean, or you're in the jungle. You don't really need to add much to that. So if you do want to stay within
Mhm.
budget, a lot of the times I say just focus on music and lighting, and everyone is going to have a great time and nobody's going to care about the table decor.
Yeah, definitely. I have an episode out with a wedding planner, and she was like, a lot of times you look at these photos, but like, it's out in nature, and like, you're not even thinking about like, is the walkway lit from like
Right.
walking to the reception to or the ceremony to the reception if it's at night. And it's like you said, lighting's so important, and to just have your guests feeling comfortable as well too in a place that they've never most of them may have never been before.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge perk. And
Yeah,
then
and
there's
then
also, yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just gonna include a couple of those other additional expenses that kind of
Yeah.
sneak in a little bit. And we kind of alluded to it earlier, was the additional guest count. So, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, when you're looking at these packages, a lot of the times they're only included for like 30 or 40 guests. Um, what can be really convenient is if your wedding really is only going to be like 40 or 50, then you're only paying that additional fee for, 10 or so guests, and it's not that
Yeah.
much. But if you're going to have 150 people, everyone's super excited to go to your wedding, like it's adding thousands of dollars to your wedding budget.
Oh yeah.
And I have had couples realize that later on and then say, okay, we're paring down our guest list. Like we don't need to add the coworkers, we don't need to add the third cousins. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of being mindful about how many people you're expecting to have and how many people are actually going to be covered in that cost.
Yeah. I have a question for you as far as that goes. What are like the average guest counts that you're seeing people book, or is it all over the
Yeah, so
map?
it's kind of all over, but there's like a general range. So I would say like pre-COVID, it was probably about 50 to 60 guests for each destination wedding. Obviously, COVID happened, all of that kind of fell off. And then we
Mm,
saw this like post-COVID um sharp increase because everyone wanted to finally experience things again. They wanted to travel, they wanted to get out there, they were sick of sitting in their house. And so then that kind of creeped up to like 70, 80 per wedding.
wow.
But we
That's a
have kind
lot
of,
for a destination
yeah.
wedding.
Yeah, it's I mean, yeah, everybody's flying there and you're coordinating that
Mm-hmm.
whole thing. So it's a pretty good amount of people to coordinate all of that in one place. But I would say probably over the last year or so, we've seen a slight decline again. Just because, people talking or worrying about like inflation or things like that. So it's probably closer to like, I would say 50 to 70 now.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it is an odd year. I'm hearing it from the vendors here in town.
Mm,
They're not getting as many bookings as they normally do. And, I've been in the wedding industry for 10 years now, almost 11. And it's like this happens every election year where there's so
yeah.
much uncertainty happening, where they don't know who's going to be the next president and how their decisions are going to affect them and their money and their wedding plans. And so I think there is a lot of hesitation for couples in years like this. And so
Hmm.
hopefully we'll see, hopefully there won't be a recession, but who knows?
Yeah. And
um,
we've always said too, like, people want to get married regardless of the social atmosphere. So
100%.
it sometimes
Yeah.
just depends. It might just affect their budget, right? They might just want to keep
Mhm.
things simpler, have a lower guest count, make things more affordable for their guests. Either way, they still want to get married. So,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you're right. You can lower the guest count. Like you said, we can do that whole math problem with less people and it'll cost you less. And so, yeah, for sure. So do venues or resorts, I guess, charge fees for outside vendors?
Yeah, so that is probably the last biggest expense that you is almost like a hidden cost for destination
Mm-hmm.
weddings. Unfortunately, most resorts do now charge an outside vendor fee. And I think a
Wow.
part of that is because, like we were talking about earlier, with the photographer that they include in the package, more and more couples started to catch on to the fact that they're not really getting that much with that photographer. So they started bringing in more and more outside vendors. And resorts, at the end of the day, they just want to make money. So then they just
Right.
started charging for those outside vendors to come in. So we're talking, anywhere from a photographer or videographer team, hair and makeup, decor team, things like that. So some resorts will charge like per vendor. Some will just
Wow.
say you're paying this one fee and you can have whatever vendors come in as long as they're kind of like on our list of approved vendors in the area. Um, and that fee really kind of varies as well. So I've seen anywhere from just like 500 to like 1500. So it can be a significant
Wow.
cost if that couple did want to have, more vendors coming in. But typically, most couples really only have, maybe one outside vendor coming in. So
Mm-hmm. And that's just like a blanket fee as far as like you can have like five added vendors, but if you pay 1,500, is that it? Or do you have to pay per vendor?
some resorts do charge per vendor. So
Dang,
yeah.
that is a huge added expense.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
sometimes with like the photographer situation where the vendor fee will be waived if they stay at the resort. So that's a lot of the
Yeah.
times why they stay there, because the couple's not paying the vendor fee. The photographer gets a free 3 night stay at a resort.
Mm-hmm.
It can kind of cheat the system a little bit in that way.
Yeah. Wow. And even for hair and makeup too, that's a lot. That's an added expense. And that's
Mm-hmm.
a really good tip, Deanna, because I don't think a lot of people know that. I didn't know that. And
Yeah,
so,
and
yeah.
like I said, there's a lot of different factors. So like some packages will include hair and makeup, like just for the bride, and then the rest of the bridal party's okay with doing their own. And some
Mm-hmm.
resorts have like a pre-approved vendor list where they have, maybe 3 or 4 different vendors that they will allow to come in for hair and makeup, but they won't charge you the vendor fee because it's kind of on their, they've got a deal themselves. So there's some workarounds
Yeah.
to it, but yeah, it can add up if it's,
Wow.
doesn't qualify.
Yeah, for sure. Because you're paying that fee in addition to paying that vendor too. And
Right.
so you're probably doubling or just adding more money onto what you're wanting to pay per vendor. So that's a really good thing to think about when you're doing your budget.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah, definitely. Well, this has been so awesome chatting with you. I feel like I learned a lot as far as destination weddings go, and you are the resource for it. And so definitely go follow her at Breezy Brides. Do you want to say like where everyone can find you?
Yeah, well, thank you again. I feel like this is obviously just like a passion of mine. I feel like when I got married in 2017, like resources were so slim out there for destination weddings,
Yeah.
and it kind of can hold people back from having one because they just don't really know what they're about. So it's been my
Hmm.
goal ever since to kind of just share that information. So yeah, if you are interested in more, I do have a website that includes blog posts and things like that. That's just breezybrides.com. I also have my podcast, which is the Breezy Brides podcast. And I have a destination wedding planner as well. So if you do follow through and want to have a destination wedding, that is on Amazon and Etsy. And then lastly, I'm just on social media. So sharing, resort stays, wedding package information, anything like that. And across TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, it's just at Breezy Brides. So
That's awesome. I love that you have a planner that's on Amazon. That's so great. Like, what a great
yeah,
resource. I
it's,
love it.
when there, like we kind of talked about, a wedding is a wedding, right? So like you still have to
Hmm.
plan for it, but the planning is entirely different from a traditional wedding and a destination wedding. So
Oh,
when I
yes.
just looked up wedding planners, I was like, none of these work for a destination wedding. So
No.
I just made my own.
Yeah, right. I love it. And now this is what you do, and you help so many couples with their destination wedding planning. And so definitely reach out to Deanna. And thank you so much. This has been so awesome.
Thank you so much. It has been so fun.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wedding Reporter podcast. I hope you learned a little bit and had fun today. To find more resources and podcast episodes, visit NashvilleBrideGuide.com for more information.
And as always, click the subscribe button and leave us a review. Until next time, I'm Alyssa DeChico, signing off.